final figures that they're hoping they're going to get from Beacon Hill.
Okay. I think you mind interrupting. Mentioned, and that the governor's budget obviously took into account increases in the meals tax and an increase in the hotels tax. I'm not sure hotels tax makes much of a difference for Pembroke. But, and on the other hand, excuse me, there's no provision for additional revenue in the House version of the budget. But is that something you consider? I mean, would you be interested? Would you consider wanting to, say, go to Representative Webster, or to Senator Murray, obviously, or to any other representatives, and go to them and speak to them about the the idea of having a meals tax, for example, that would generate more revenue for the town? Do you think that's something is the revenue more beneficial for the town, or would the increase in the taxes on local businesses be more harmful than that?
Do you mean the 1% tax?
The 1% meals, increase of the meals.
That the cities and towns themselves can charge?
Well, both.
You mean statewide?
Both the statewide one, which I believe is intended to go back to the cities and towns, plus the idea of a local option to add, say, I guess it's 5% now, and add an additional percentage by each town to generate additional revenue.
Well, I would never support a local meals tax. I would rather tighten our belts and do with what we have than to add another tax, especially that. And that's not just a tax for pulling money out of the pockets of the citizens of Pembroke, but I'll go back to the businesses that we have in town. We have so few businesses in town. I don't want to cramp. I don't want them to have a deterrent for people to come to those restaurants, bars, and taverns. Okay, so I think as much as it'll hurt the taxpayer, and that's a deterrent for me to vote for it, I think it'll hurt those particular businesses because people will choose to go elsewhere. And real quickly about to backtrack to the Prop 2.5, I never got to say one thing, that we haven't had a Proposition 2.5 override in the history of its existence. And I remember when it came into being, for the sole reason that we have boards of selectmen in town and people on the advisory committee and other boards and committees and department heads that came together and made the sacrifices and the correct decisions. Back in 2004 was a tighter budget squeeze than we have right now. We may see it in 2010, but as far as 2009, back in 2004 was even worse. And for the quick thinking of Steve Curley and the advisory board and the rest of those and the rest of the members and the board of selectmen, those are the people who deserve the credit for not having a Prop 2.5 override or not needing one.
Okay. Anybody else want to add to this, or James?
Well, I mean, they definitely deserve the credit on the issue, but we also have to look at, really what the basis is. We're currently, it limits at 2.5%, increase every year, and the inflation rate's over 2.5%.
Yeah.
So, the town's money doesn't remain the same in value as everyone else's, it decreases. So, whether or not, like I said, whether or not you use 2.5 overrides or you don't, the town's still losing money.
Okay, let's talk about the meals tax. How about the possibility, for example, increasing the meals tax both statewide, lobbying to have it increased statewide, and also the possibility of giving the towns local options? How would you feel about something like that?
I would probably never support it unless it was like a situation where we've looked at every single possible option and there's nothing left to cut. There's nothing else to do, and it's putting essential services in the community in danger. I mean, I'd never say no to something like that. It's pennies off the dollar, but money's money, and when it comes down to it, pennies add up. And at the moment, you need to look in, and we have to look inward as a community and find out what exactly it is that we need to cut.
Okay.
I mean, it's only going to get worse.
Okay. I think we're going to wrap this up, but I want to just end here with some philosophical question. It's going back to something Lou said. I think Lou brought it up, is one funny thing about, I've noticed this in other towns, boards of selectmen, is they're often looked upon as having substantially more power than they actually do. People will go to a board of selectmen, and in other towns, selectmen will say, well, you will have to go to the DPW to vote on that issue, or the Board of Health, or another committee which has an independent board, the planning board, for example. how do you, obviously, I guess the real question I'm getting at here, forgive me, is how does the Board of Selectmen, especially in a time like this, demonstrate leadership and shows how it can take action in certain situations where it may not necessarily have power